Listen, I'm not sure what video this is going to be, but today is a historic day, September 9th, 2025. And the reason why it's historic is because we're launching our Client Ascension AI Assisted Agency program. And I realize that's not historic to anybody but us, but super excited to get to this point. Exhausted, to be honest. You guys heard me do the fat guy side of relief a second ago as I sat down, but we've never put so much work into a launch. In this video, just to be clear, isn't to sell you guys on that program. It's more so to talk about what went into creating the program itself, because it was a lot. I mean, it felt like for at least a month and a half, every single night was regular work, like 9 to 6-ish, workout, dinner, and then from like 9 when I'm chilling again, it's like 9 to 12 filming something. And that's not to give myself a pat on the back or anything like that. I just wanted to maybe help people understand. Number one, like if you're trying to build something new, don't even worry about balance. Like the pursuit of balance is completely a waste of time. Also, we're at the point now where we're taking sales calls starting today, which is why I'm making this today. We spent, I don't know what the ratio is, but probably 10 to 1, 5 to 1, maybe 3 to 1 at the least is what I'd recommend. Like time spent on product versus marketing and sales, which I think is rare in the coaching industry. So many people are just like, hey, let's just sling this thing. And yeah, you can sell it without having a great product. The issue is the refunds, the reputation, something we've always taken super seriously. So really happy with the amount of work that we put into the product here. And yeah, dude, I'm just excited for this part now because a lot of entrepreneurship is just how much work are you willing to put in with absolutely zero guarantee that it pays off. And today is the first day where we can actually start to see return on our time investment up to this point. And when you've been doing it for long enough, you kind of know exactly, okay, this is going to work, this is going to work, this is going to work. But yeah, I mean, no money's come out of it yet, right? And hundreds of hours have been invested into it, and tens of thousands of dollars as well with just different contractors that we paid to help us out. Now it's gonna be really cool. Pretty much as always, whenever we launch something new, I'm in the trenches. I'm back on sales calls. Daniel's actually gonna be on sales calls with me, which is gonna be fun. But hopefully, I'm filming this in a couple weeks, talking about a great launch, great success, and a new sales team that I built out because we're just scaling, and I need to get people out of it. But before I get into that, I want to actually share some footage from our event that we had for Olympia clients last week. We had this fucking giant mansion castle in Fort Lauderdale. I'll show you guys around the house itself. And I had a good podcast with one of our clients, had a good presentation with my business partner and CEO, Andre. So I'm going to roll into some footage of that first, give you guys a look into the event itself with the event, and then kind of like the bookending launch. This is going to be an insanely valuable video. Like there will be unfathomable amounts of value. So I would watch the whole thing. It's probably going to be a longer one. I still don't have an editor yet. So maybe it's just one long video of the event, but maybe I'll throw a Drake song in there. I don't know, but we're just going to roll into it at this point.
So what are your main observations in terms of how different internet leads are in comparison to referral or network leads?
Yeah, really good question. So basically everything we do comes from the internet, but specifically cold traffic. So you're running paid ads or they're coming from the internet as opposed to somebody that already knows, likes, and trusts you. These referrals, the warm traffic leads. I would say that the main difference is one, the referral, the hey, my buddy introduced me, those are a lot easier to close, but you can only grow that in so many ways. Like you're going to need internet leads, right? It's inevitable. If you want to grow the business and you can't grow without your network, you're not going to be able to increase your network that fast. So having a sales process that can also close those tougher cold traffic internet leads, as you're talking about them, is usually what's required to grow, which is what I do for our company, is just making sure that the sales process A to Z is where it needs to be in order so that our clients and us as a company can close those internet leads. I'd say the main difference between closing somebody that's coming from a referral or from cold traffic on the internet is the trust isn't there quite yet. So if I want to be able to build up that trust after they book a sales call, but before that call happens, or after they even become a lead, but before I'm getting them on a call or at an in-person meeting, whatever my sales process looks like, I want to try to build up as much trust as possible, right? So they're coming in with an understanding and they already know we do good work, they know what we do, so I'm going to be sending them over testimonials, case studies, making sure that I'm getting these guys to the call with a certain level of trust, right? Because if referral leads are here in terms of trust, internet leads are here, so I'm trying to get them closer and closer. Now, when they're in that meeting itself, right? So they're already on the sales call. I'd say the main thing is you just need to have a script that you can build onto, because there's going to be an awkward transition, right? It's not like you're going to go from somebody who's only closed referrals to now I'm a master salesman that can close anybody from cold traffic overnight. But what I see people do wrong time and time again is they're starting this process, and every call they're approaching in a unique way. They're basically shooting from the hip. They're ripping everything up from the roots, and they're starting over, and they're just wondering why they're not seeing any progress. Whereas if you have a script that does all the basic right things, right? You figure out why they booked a call in the first place, you get some background information so you can ask educated questions, you get a real good understanding of what their current situation is, you get a real understanding of where they're looking to go, you get a real understanding of how long they've been struggling with this to create a little bit of pain, create a little bit of urgency, you get a real understanding of how likely they think they are. If they don't address the issue, that the situation will get better, which is not very likely, right? Which establishes opportunity costs, and you have a good pitch. So like if all these things are going into your script, even if it's not exactly where it needs to be day one, I can go in there, I can make iterations to the script. I'm going to be able to build out the process. Because reality is, if you're just starting sales to internet leads, as you call them, or cold traffic, as I call them, you're probably going to suck. You're probably going to be maybe like a 3 out of 10. You need to have the self-awareness to understand that, as opposed to just blaming the leads. And if you want to incrementally go up from a 3 out of 10 to a 4 out of 10 to a 5 out of 10 to a 10 out of 10 eventually, it's much easier if you're building on that script, if you're building on that existing process, as opposed to just coming into each call once again, shooting from the hip, and just treating each opportunity in a brand new, unique way. That's usually not scalable, nor is it effective.
Like for our Belgian audience, let's clear it out once and for all. Like, what is the best time to call a lead after they filled out the form?
Within 90 seconds, as soon as possible.
Yeah.
All right.
As soon as possible.
As soon as possible. It's one of the companies in our space, ZoomInfo, because I run Client Ascension. I also run a company called ListKit, which is a B2B data platform. So a large publicly traded company in that space is called ZoomInfo. And one of the things that helped their company scale as much as possible, I was listening to their CEO talk about this on a podcast, was they had a 90-second speed to lead. So somebody requested more information, within a minute and a half, a sales guy dialed them up. And if I'm looking to contact leads, you're working with a guy like Stig, he's going to get you a lot of leads. One of the biggest metrics you want to look at is the connection rate. So, okay, somebody opts in to actually learn more, request more information. Usually the biggest drop-off is how many of those people do I actually get into a live conversation, right? Because if I'm looking at what my cold callers do, it's usually a 10 to 12% connection rate. And then from there, 80% of those guys will get into a conversation. At least 50% of those guys will get set for a formal meeting. And that's what we want. And the sales guys handle it from there. But if that number is the smallest one, the 10 to 12%, which is good, if it drops below that, I mean, you're just dealing with such a smaller amount of opportunities. And the biggest way to get that connection rate from where they may be at now, which could be 5, 6, 7%. I've seen all of these to 10, 12, 15, 20% even. I've seen numbers as high as that. The main difference, the main lever that you can pull is just speed to lead.
Okay. How should a growing business approach lead scoring and qualification when they're dealing with higher volume of leads? So, for example, they get 50 leads monthly, and now they get 200 leads or more on a monthly basis.
So I'm assuming your audience is mature enough to have a CRM of some sort. They have a way of housing these leads and tracking them. They have a pipeline.
Most of the time, yeah.
Okay, hopefully. Well,
yeah, hopefully, yeah.
If you don't have that, you're fucked. I'm kidding. It's very important though to see any type of success. Now, if you do have a CRM and you do have a pipeline with specific stages there, the way they're going to do it is by tagging leads based on some sort of routing form. So, I mean, you have Typeform, you have a bunch of different companies that do this, but you should be able to look at your offer and say, okay, which people tend to be the highest LTV clients, which people have the highest chance of closing, just based on the different personas that we talk to. So one helpful exercise just could be to map out and sit down and actually say, okay, what type of businesses do we usually close on calls? What type of businesses tend to be the highest LTV clients? And then it's just a matter of asking questions in the routing form to tag those people in your CRM. And obviously the ones that have the highest probability of closing or the highest probability of being a high LTV clients, those people should take priority. Because as Stig just said, speed to lead is super important, but a lot of your clients are probably busy at the same time.
Yeah.
And if I have an hour in the morning to make sales calls, I want to focus those sales calls on the people that have the highest potential to close and have the highest potential to pay me a lot of money over their lifetime. So basically, make sure that you have a CRM, make sure you have a routing form that asks these questions to figure out what bucket these people are falling into, tag those people in your CRM, and make sure that, in the sake of speed to lead, your sales team or you, if you're doing the sales yourself, you're prioritizing those leads specifically.
Yeah, and you said it correctly. Like when the leads start to flow in, you see that people get a lot more busy.
Yeah.
Let's zoom in on business owners who do all their leads themselves.
So they're doing founder-led sales. Okay.
Yeah, indeed. So they get on every sales call, like, and they want to transition to hiring the first sales guy. Like, what's the best piece of advice you could give them in order to have success with that first guy? Because a lot of the company's success is on the line at that moment. Like, what is your best piece of advice to like hire the first guy?
Yeah, great question. A lot of times people try to hire a sales guy prematurely, so they're not yet ready to hire a salesperson. The reason why is they don't have a sales process. Because if you're doing founder-led sales, odds are you're selling a lot of your experience, your expertise that you've built up in, over the course of maybe a decade, maybe 3 years, maybe 5 years, but a lot of time, right? You also care quite a bit about the business because it's your business. And the reality is anybody that you hire, they're not going to care about your business as much as you care about your business. So when most people come to me saying, hey, when should I hire a closer? I'd say 80% of the time it's too soon. Because, number one, like you need a lot of lead flow, so make sure you have that lead flow that he's talking about where they're getting at least 20, 25 calls per week. But even then, you still need to have a process in place. Because if you bring somebody in and you just share them your call recordings, hey, this is me closing a bunch of deals, watch your recordings and see if you can replicate that. Once again, if you don't have a process that actually exists outside of you doing founder-led sales and sharing your 4, 5, 6, 10 years of knowledge, it's just not going to work. And I've seen that happen a lot, and people come in, they're like, dude, I'm doing, this person has all the call recordings, why aren't they able to close? Like, this salesperson sucks. I'm like, no, honestly, maybe you're a good business owner, but as a sales manager, you suck. You don't have a script for him to work off of. And even if you do have a script, the way that you're selling on these calls is entirely different than the script itself. And you're expecting somebody to be able to sell the same way you sell, which is off of 10 years of knowledge. How are you supposed to expect that person to perform in the first month? Right? So usually what I recommend that these people do is, one, make sure that you have a script and just analyze it. Number one, are you doing anything similar to that script? If not, continue to edit it. And if you're not doing anything similar to what you're doing on those calls, just make it a challenge for yourself to try to sell without the founder credibility and the founder expertise. So to give you an example of this, I know a lot about cold email. I scaled up a cold email agency to 6 figures a month. We run Client Ascension, which focuses a lot on cold email. We have a lot of cold email content. We teach our clients how to do that. Now, when we launched ListKit, we have this cold email setup offer, which kind of works as like a cold email agency type offer in the beginning, and then clients manage it on their own after that. I've got 7 guys now that all sell at a very high level. They're closing above 30%, selling cold email service. None of those guys knew a lot about cold email coming into it, really. Maybe they were familiar with the concept, but they weren't cold email experts. And the only reason I was able to get those guys up to where they're at now, closing through cold traffic, so I don't have to be sitting there closing all the deals myself, is because when I was building out the script, I made sure that I wasn't leaning too much into my expertise as somebody who's ran cold email for years and somebody who ran a cold email agency. I was making it a challenge, saying, okay, if I can't transfer this easily to somebody, it's not going to work. I'm going to be stuck doing sales calls myself forever. So that's one thing. Like, make sure you're actually ready to hire a salesperson, which means you have a sales process that works and exists outside of you just purely leaning on your experience as a founder. The second thing there, even if you do all of those things, the first sales rep, there's usually going to be some bumps in the road. Like, I've met some people who have hired them and they hire a rock star first time and it's perfect. Like, great, awesome. That's usually not the reality. So
that's a lucky shot.
Lucky shot, yeah. Right? So I prefer to hire from our network. And the reason why is because if somebody doesn't just if somebody's not joining just because of the earning potential, they're joining our company because they have admiration for me as the founder or one of my co-founders as a founder or the company itself, they're more likely to just actually, fight through that uncomfortable period where they're getting up to full speed. They're most likely to actually stay around, have some perseverance, as opposed to just look for another offer when that first bump in the road does come.
Yeah, have you seen that happen, that someone was like questionable to you in like the first couple of months? Like, is he a good sales guy or no? Or you always have that gut feeling of like, yeah, he has the X factor, he has the potential? Or is it more like pushing through and then it clicks?
I've definitely pushed through and seen it click, 100%. And that's usually because I saw that happen more when our companies were less mature. And it wasn't because I was hiring horrible people. It's just because my sales process wasn't where it needed to be yet. One of our closers who, one of my good buddies actually, grew up with them, and I hired him at Client Ascension, and I didn't really have a sales process. I was really doing the founder-led sales stuff. And the first day he called me and he was like, Dan, I don't think I can do this. I don't know if I could do this. Because he didn't even know what an agency was, and I was just giving him all this stuff, and all my call recordings were, once again, I was not following the script. I was just leaning on founder-led sales and selling off of the expertise a little bit too much. And I realized, like, okay, this person, I know he's a smart guy. I grew up with him. I know he has potential. Like, he's a good people person. He can talk to somebody and get along with him pretty quickly. I just need to work on the sales script with him. So we kind of persevered and pushed through that. That was early days, right? So if that's where you're at, like, yeah, I think there is a strong probability you can see somebody improve. That said, I still have always had a rule where if they don't get up to half KPI in the first 20 calls, I just fire them. Because it's very difficult to take a 3 out of 10 to a 10 out of 10. It's very doable with active management to take a 7 out of 10 to an 8 out of 10, a 9 out of 10. I always tell people, like, if they're really that far behind, if they can't make that happen, usually trying to work through and push past that point. What I mean by half KPI, guys, is let's say you're shooting for a 30% close rate, and the first 20 calls, they got to be at a bare minimum of a 15% close rate, or just cut them loose. Because especially if you're doing commission-based sales, it's usually too steep of a mountain to climb. And trying to push through that is only going to waste your time and their time, especially in sales. Like, not only is it going to be a drag on you, it's going to be a drag on them, because in commission-based sales, if you're not closing, you're also not making money. So you're not doing people any favors in that end. So that's kind of the way I view it. Is like, if they don't hit half KPI in the first 20 calls, that was more so a failure in my hiring process. Like, this person's just too far behind, and I don't want to try to fight and an endless war there. But if they do get up to half KPI, I'm like, okay, I can give them another month to get up to full KPI, and those are the types of people that I want to push through. So you have to have a little bit of that gut feeling, subjective, like, do I believe in this person? But you also should have, like, the clear, objective, strong KPIs where it's like, okay, if it's not working by then, I just need to cut the person loose and move on.
Yeah, and when you zoom in on, like, the good people, what's something you noticed about taking them from good to great? Is it like more tonality? Is it like more pushing on, like, a dream outcome, pushing on pain? What is it in like your observation?
Yeah, so it's different for every rep, right? But I would say some people struggle a lot more with discovery than pitching. Some people struggle a lot more with pitching than discovery. And it's like, in general, if I was to make a broad strokes generalization, the two things that people struggle with the most is, one, just establishing opportunity cost in discovery, which basically is just a shift from the prospect before you start pitching to seeing this, whatever you're selling, as a need to have as opposed to a nice to have.
Yeah, you got to create the urgency.
You're creating urgency, and you're also painting the picture of what happens if they don't fix this. Because no matter what you're selling, I don't know what your business owner is like. They could be construction, they could be doing solar, door to door, they could be doing retail, in-person stuff. No matter what you sell, your biggest competitor is not the other company that's making more money than you. It's not the guy running the same shop in in your local town. Your biggest competitor is inaction. It's people just doing nothing. Like, they hop on the call, they don't buy from you, they don't buy from the next guy. They just decide that whatever they came to you for fixing, life can exist another 3 months. Like, if let's say I'm selling, solar, and it's like, okay, I'm talking to somebody and I'm on their doorstep. If they're just like, I don't really care about where my energy bill is, I can just let it, kind of continue on. It's been fine this way for the 2 years I've lived in this home. What's really going to happen if I let it persist for another 2 years? Like, those people, like, unless you can establish those opportunity costs, most of the time they don't buy from you, they don't buy from the next guy, they just do fuck all. They kind of just, sit on their thumb and don't do anything. So opportunity cost and discovery. And the second thing is holding people accountable at the end of the call, right? Like, actually, once you establish opportunity costs, we've decided that they need to do something.
Yeah.
Right? So therefore, the worst decision that they can make is doing nothing. Right? And this is where, like, active closing comes in. And even if you have a good offer, you're gonna have to, like, actively close people and sell them. It's not gonna be all, like, frictionless laydowns where people are like, yep, cool, sign me up. And the reason why is because even though these people know they need help with whatever you're selling, which is why they booked the call in the first place, they haven't done it yet. So they're looking to go through some transformation. They're looking to go from point A to point B. They're looking to go from poor to rich. They're looking to go from fat to skinny. Whatever that transformation is, they're still not the person who's gone through that transformation yet. So the thing that's needed to get them from point A to point B is inherently foreign to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So in order to actually get them to make the commitment to make that transformation, there's going to need to be some hard closing there, right? And it's not as much of, like, high pressure hard closing if you've already established opportunity costs, which is essentially like, hey, you need to do something. Because once again, going back to what I said earlier, like, the biggest competitor for whatever your offer is almost always inaction. It's people just letting their current situation persist.
Yeah, and do you close, like, on that note, or do you close them on, like, the point B that you painted the picture of, like, the ideal world, or do you, like, more close on?
Well, you do both, but you're not going to be a great closer if you can only close people by convincing them that you'll get to point B, because a lot of times point B is completely unrealistic. Right? Like take our program, for example. We help agencies grow, and a lot of agency owners want to grow from 1K a month to 500K a month. If I was to tell everybody that we could do that in 12 months, would I close more people? Sure, but would there also be disputes and a lot of shit on Reddit about us and people that are like, oh, Dan said that we could do this and we didn't? Painting that picture of what point B looks like is important, but you need to be good enough to also set good expectations for fulfillment. So that's why it's much more like, I tend to lean into, hey, you have to do something, and showing them the quick wins and the achievable wins. Yes, exactly. As opposed to just saying like, you could close a lot of people if you were like, hey, you want to get to 50K a month? Cool, done. Like we can get you there. But once again, like your fulfillment team's going to hate you. You're going to have a lot of refunds. You're going to have a lot of disputes, and nobody's going to win. Neither you nor the prospect long term.
If you compare it to like weight loss, you don't close, for example, on like, you're going to lose like 10 kilos, but more of like, are you ready to start because this and this and this.
And honestly, it not only is it more ethical, I believe that it works more long term. I think the big transformations work better in marketing than sales, which like the weight loss example is fun to use because it's super simple. Like if I'm telling somebody like, the goal here is to lose 100 pounds, if I just say that in marketing, like, maybe that can get them on the call. But in sales, if I just don't actually paint the picture for what like the quick wins are going to look like, how this person could start tracking their macros and tracking their calories and get on a workout plan and start to get 10,000 steps a day, like the person on the other side of the phone, a lot of times isn't even going to believe it, right? So definitely, more so want to have realistic results, but also like realistic results aren't always the most sexy thing, which is why that opportunity cost is so important.
Okay. Sales is also a lot about mindsets. Like what makes or breaks like the sales guy in terms of mindset and longevity?
Don't take anything personally. This person owes you nothing. And you're just there to help people. That's it. So diving a little bit deeper into the don't take anything personally, the people that get really, because there are going to be shitty prospects. There are going to be prospects that just piss you off. Like I've seen so many examples on sales calls of somebody that's being just completely horrible to one of my salespeople. But the sales guy that lets that like affect his energy and drag into the next 2, 3, 4 calls is one that typically doesn't make it out. Like they just never succeed long term. In terms of like this person owing you nothing, like there's going to be a lot of people who break verbal commitments. They say they're going to do this, like cool, send over the agreement, I'll sign, we'll be ready to go by the end of the week, and then they don't sign, right? So you can play butthurt and like, oh man, this person said he was going to do it, these leads just suck, they're saying things, they're lying to me, like this person owes you nothing, right? Like you need to get better at sales. You need to have ownership of that. It's your fault for not closing them on the call. It's your fault for not being able to see through the smoke screen or taking what they said at face value. So it's more so like I trusted the prospect too much. I need to get better at my job as opposed to, whining about the fact that you're just having, bad luck of the draw. And then the whole, I'm just there to help people because like I said, like this person wants to go from point A to point B, but going from point A to point B and making that transformation and making the decision that can get me there is usually going to be outside my comfort zone, and people tend to fight like hell to stay inside of my comfort zone. So it's like, there is going to be hard closing, but I just need to remember like what I'm doing is a great service. Like people only have a negative connotation towards sales because when they're picturing sales, they're picturing the guy that's not helping anybody, right? They're picturing like the slimy used car salesman who's selling somebody a lemon. At the moment they drive it off the lot, it just fucking sputters out and doesn't work anymore. Right? So if you're selling a good offer and you're helping people, that can keep you in sales for a long time as opposed to somebody who's treating this as such like a transactional business. Like if I go into every single call saying this person has $5,000 USD in their pocket and I'm going to transfer it to mine, like man, you'll get burnt out quickly. Because I've had periods in my life where I'm just like, all I'm thinking about in the sales process is just like, did I close? How much should I close? Did I close? How much should I close? Did I close? How much should I close? And when you're thinking of it that way, like it can work for a period of time. But that's really the only times in my career where I've experienced like real burnout. And it's because I'm looking at things the wrong way as opposed to just like, did I help this person? Like even if they didn't sign with us, did I point them in the right direction? And like if I could view that as a win, it just becomes a lot more sustainable and a lot more ethical. And in my opinion, like long term, if we're zooming out from just looking at like a month to a year, 5 years, 10 years, I think you actually will make a lot more money that way.
And do you like reinforce it from time to time with your sales team?
All the time.
All the time.
Salespeople are babies. They're super
sending
like
case studies.
They're like, it's like they're on a team. They're usually the ones with the highest ego, and then also with the most fragile ego at the same time. So yeah, it takes a lot of reinforcement in terms of just like the values that I like to preach. It's you know that famous cliche, but you know a true cliche. Like they need to be reminded more than they need to be taught. That's why I meet with my team every single day and we go over this stuff all the time, because I can say this and they can be like, oh yeah, that has merit and that's smart, but they're gonna forget it.
Yeah.
Right?
I think also in Belgium that needs to be part of like culture to share like wins with your sales team
100%.
like on a regular basis.
Because what they need to be reminded that they're helping people. Like we talk about client wins all the time, because the positive clients are not the loudest. Like the clients that get great results, they're usually not the ones that are reaching out to the salespeople again. Sometimes they do, and when they do, that's awesome and it's appreciated. But a lot of times, if you don't show them the client wins because they're not involved on the client fulfillment side, the ones they're hearing from are the ones who are angry. And like that affects them, right? Because if I'm preaching, hey, you're here to help people, and all they're seeing is negativity, they're like, well, Dan's lying, we're not actually helping people, that's gonna fuck with their psyche a lot. So you definitely need to drown them in wins so that they can, you know, believe that they're actually helping people, and also so that they have conviction. Because I mean, conviction, just believing what you're selling, if sales is a transference of belief and they have no belief to transfer, obviously they're not gonna be very good.
True. Like what's one piece of advice you'd give to someone like struggling to convert their internet leads into like paying customers?
Watch your sales calls.
Rewatch them and then
Watch a lot of them. I mean, there's so many cool things that you can do with AI nowadays to go through like hundreds of transcripts at a time. I talked about this, but you know, we use like Fireflies, for example, and Fireflies has a connector to Claude, so I can just easily ask like, hey, what's going on in Henry's calls? What are the most common objections that he's getting? Like all that stuff is possible now, but still, I mean, transcripts, AI, you can do a lot of stuff a lot quicker than you used to be able to do it. I still would never underestimate actually just sitting there and watching a call. Because the things like tonality, is my sales guy comfortable in silence? Is my sales guy too comfortable in silence to the point where at the end of the call, he's allowing people to speak first and they're asking off the call before he can actually ask the sales? Like all those little things there, those insights usually don't take a sales genius to find. The main issue is business owners are usually too lazy to watch their sales calls. So watch your sales calls.
Yeah. Any final thoughts or advice for business owners who are like looking to like double down on the whole internet thing, internet lead generation?
Yeah, there's a lot of great information online, but if information was all we needed, we'd all be billionaires with six packs, and it's not enough, right? You actually have to implement as well. So in terms of like guys that I like with sales, Alex Hormozi, it's phenomenal. Cole Gordon, Taylor Welch, just watch this stuff, but then actually take the time to apply it. Like watch the sales call and be like, what are my guys doing here? Are they doing anything similar? What's my script look like? How different is it than that? Because just the lack of a process and the lack of iterating on that process and getting real feedback from your reps and from sales calls that you're watching, that's usually where the chain breaks. It's just people like actually, they're not starting that process. They don't have a dashboard that shows how many scheduled calls they have, how many live calls, how many offers, how many closes. They're not ever looking at outside sales information from companies that are doing, you know, 3 million a month, 5 million a month, 10 million a month, which is why I watch so much of this content, because I think we've gotten better and better at sales, but I realize that there's like fucking killer sales teams out there. I think I have a good sales team. I don't think we have like a killer like Navy SEALs level sales team. So I love the fact that we live in this day and age where I can go and I can watch videos on, you know, how Cole Gordon built a $30 million a year sales team, and how Alex Hormozi, is able to sell, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of consulting per week and do a fucking webinar where in one day he's making $100 million. So like take that stuff in, but just realize that like watching it and doing nothing is just mental masturbation. Like actually watch your sales calls, lay out your process, whatever that may look like, and figure out how you can start to apply that stuff, because there's a wealth of knowledge out there, but once again, you're not going to get rich off information alone. You have to do something with it.
Yeah, I think that's like the biggest thing in Belgium. They're so like far behind, I believe, on creating like processes. Like they believe the sales guy on their word and what they are saying, instead of like actually recording calls or going with the sales guy, for example, in solar, going into the meeting, perhaps record the meeting, upload it to AI, of course, with consent of the customer. But that's like a huge deal to gather the data and do something with the data in order to make educated decisions on where you're going to move in the sales process to actually improve on it.
100%. I'm gonna take your word for it, because I frankly have no idea what's going on in Belgium. But with like door-to-door sales, for example, too, I know like one of the bigger problems in that industry is the fact that everybody just looks at numbers. And a lot of times, because it's live conversations, they're not having any type of feedback on like what's actually happening here. So I have no idea if my sales guy is even like these numbers could be completely fake. I could just walk around the neighborhood and say I knocked on 10 more doors just to hit my numbers for the day, which is why it's so important to actually do quality control. Like for me, I have to go in and I have to every now and then, and I have a team leader that does this now for me, but we have to listen to the actual cold calls because somebody could just be, dial, hang up, dial, hang up, dial, hang up. Hey, Dan, I made $100 in a day. It's like just making sure that, for example, if I was running a door-to-door sales team, I would literally just go out with some of my knockers there. And I would have people, with the consent of the client, I don't know what the laws look like there, but have like a recorder in my pocket and, ask if, we're able to record this conversation, whatever way, so I can actually hear what they're saying.
Yeah, like only the bigger companies like actually do it. They say like, okay, is it okay if the call is being recorded and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
People think like it's a big constraint, but some customers are like really open to it to like train the guy.
Yeah.
If you frame it the correct way. So that's definitely something like business owners in Belgium like need to start doing because you have like these tools with AI. You can literally say, what's a constraint? What are the bottlenecks? What is tonality like? AI like literally helps you to improve on the sales process.
Yeah, and I would say if AI is behind on one thing, it is kind of like that more so tonality aspect, like the soft skills, like actually being able to see that interaction, which is why like even in an age of AI, I would still recommend like literally just having a manager that's walking around with a rep for the day if they're doing door to door, if I can't record those calls, but like actually sitting there and listening to it, which isn't sexy. It's actually super boring for the most part, but I don't think I've ever sat there and watched a call for an hour and been like, I got nothing out of this. Every single time I'm getting a few nuggets that can help that rep and then also help the rest of the team as well. Because a lot of the times, people are sharing, the same issues, the same struggles, and it's usually not that rep's fault, it's just a failure in my process, which is once again, like that we preach ownership a lot to our sales reps. I would be a complete hypocrite if I didn't have ownership on my end and say like, oh yeah, this is more so a process issue on my end as opposed to, them being lazy or not having things figured out on their end.
Yeah. In terms of like entrepreneurship, is your experience still like being on this level that the most boring actions are like moving the needle the most?
I wouldn't even say I'm a good entrepreneur. So I don't know how to answer that question. I'm very much different. Like when you think of an entrepreneur, you're thinking like typically as like I'm either a visionary or an integrator. I'm really just somebody who spent 90% of his time getting really good at sales, taking thousands of sales calls. Like I'm just blessed to be partnered with great co-founders. So for me personally, the stuff that I talked about specifically is what moves the needle for sales. But in terms of like as an entrepreneur, like broad strokes, broad level, I feel like I'm not even qualified to answer that question. Like I would watch Daniel Fazio's content on marketing, I would watch Andre Hagel's content on fulfillment, and I would say, it's kind of like a combination of all those things. And whatever they tell you for those departments would probably be what I'd follow.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that was my final question. Thank you so much for making
the
time and sharing with our Belgian audience like every insight. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, I feel like I speak a little too fast, so hopefully they can understand things. Or
we will definitely translate it.
This might be the first YouTube video you should put on like 0.75x speed as opposed to like 1.2, 1.5.
Yeah, they're pretty much like educated in English, so it won't be a problem, I think. And we'll definitely translate it with the correct subtitles.
Sweet.
So thank you so much, man.
Thank you, bro. Once again, we'll go double handshake.
Yep.
Right, cut it there.
Helps out.
Sweet. All right.
Especially for higher level people.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I'll take this one. When to get back in the trenches. I have a lot of you guys who ask me like, hey Dan, like you still do sales as opposed to just managing the team? Yeah, I have to. And the reason's not because I'm selling the same offer that we've been selling for a while. So I don't sell any client ascension, right? Like the actual flagship client ascension program. I don't sell our list kit cold email setup offer because I have a sales team that already sells that at a high level and always hits KPI. But whenever we're testing something new, so Daniel mentioned the AI automated agency offer, and that's something where I'm gonna be on sales calls Monday, Tuesday. Whenever there's a new process, I like to roll up my sleeves, get my hands dirty. And I've talked to so many guys, especially in Olympia, who are getting calls from paid ads for the first time, or even in client ascension, who are getting calls from cold email in the first time, and they're like, dude, they're just not closing with the script that's always worked for me. I don't know what's wrong. And I'll ask them, well, that script you're using, have you used it with cold email leads? No. Have you used it with paid ads leads? No. So I'm like, okay, so how do you know it works for that? I don't. That's when you jump back in the role. That's where you're going to get the most insights. It's very similar to what Nick was saying about the clients that he's interviewed and the fact that he watches sales calls. Like this stuff is for a reason. If you have a leader yourself jumping back into that role temporarily, the insights that you can get, I mean, I know it's not sexy to jump back on sales calls for a week, but the insights that you can get doing price discovery questions, figuring out why these people showed up to the call in the first place, it's honestly a massive shortcut. Like usually clients don't like to do this until they've had plateaued revenue months for 3, 4, 5, 6 months in a row, and it's like they could save themselves so much time if they just jump back in. And it also shows, I mean, I think the easiest way to lead is just leading by example. You're not asking the team to do something that you want to do yourself. Basically, every single SDR that I hire, before I put them on calendar, one of the onboarding calls that I have with them is me and him just sitting there dialing. Because I'm literally showing him, like, yeah, I'm going to expect you to make 100 dials a day, But in a half hour here, I'll show you what it looks like to load up 30 people into a power dialer, and I'm calling people, and I've had people on onboarding calls tell me to fuck off. And it's actually my favorite thing, because then it just rolls off my shoulder, we're laughing about it, and immediately, something that typically takes an SDR a lot of times, 5-6 weeks to get over that initial fear of people picking up the phone and talking, is immediately solved. It's like part of my hiring process, and it's once again just goes back to that principle of I'm not asking the team to do something that I'm not willing to do. And then the last thing, just in terms of when to get back into the trenches, outside of when you need to show people you're willing to do it, and also whenever you're testing something new, is also just immediately after you've removed yourself completely from it. So as leaders, you probably communicate with your team over Slack DMs, Zoom calls, like all of the leadership stuff that you do, you probably couldn't even quantify if you were actually write it down. Like if you were to write it all down on a piece of paper, what do I do for my team? You're probably missing some things, you're probably adding in some things that you don't actually do. If you completely remove yourself, then you start to see, okay, what crutches am I holding up for my team? It's like, take a vacation, take a week off. Literally just, Andre, I think you could talk about the fact that you went on a honeymoon for 2 weeks, and for the first time since we started the business in, 4 years since we've been at this, or even longer with agency, 6, you hadn't taken one vacation. But he was able to come in and just immediately fix a lot of the problems that have been bugging us, not for just those 2 weeks, but have been bugging us for 6 months, 8 months, over at ListKit specifically, because he finally removed himself and he was seeing like, oh, okay, shit. I was a crutch for all these different departments that actually don't work on their own. And then also another realization is he's really just being a firefighter as opposed to somebody who's making a real difference. Meaning like even if he was involved in that situation, he would just help mitigate things. He wouldn't actually make them better. So one of the best times to jump back into the trenches is literally after you've removed yourself completely. Because without removing yourself, you typically have a hard time of knowing like, what am I actually doing on a day-to-day basis? And what's actually making a difference, right?
Sweet, yeah, so this one's about remaining close to value creation.
That is not one, but 2 pianos.
If you made it to this part of the video, you're a real one. Leave a comment so I can thank you. Good news is you're gonna be happy that you did, because I saved the best for last. As promised at the beginning of this thing, I wanted to make this a fun time capsule video. So as I'm sitting here today, it's Sunday night, October 5th. It's been a beautiful Sunday. Went to church, Saints won, Blue Jays won, which shows you how weird my sports fandomship is. But most importantly, the launch went really, really well. Still tons of shit to work on. Of course, there always is. But want to keep the format of this video pretty simple. Just gonna go through the timeline, and you're gonna see just how much has happened since launch because of how many things I'm able to fit in this timeline from September 9th to October 5th, where we're sitting here today. And then the second thing is just the main takeaways. And it was actually a really fun exercise for me to sit down in this super chaotic period and just zoom out a little bit and be like, okay, if somebody's starting something new or launching a new offer at their existing business, what have I learned from this past month here that it can provide some value to somebody who's going through that situation? Because it's a super intimidating thing. It's never gonna feel like a good time. You kind of just gotta jump in head first. Tons of shit's gonna be flying around and breaking all at the same time. But that's exactly what this is, just super authentic. Let's see how the launch went. So jumping in, I know at the beginning of the video, I talked a little bit about the work that went into it. Really my involvement started in July. So we had other team members that were working on this for much longer than that. Our AI coach, Lucas, did a great job. Daniel did a great job with a lot of the content in the AI dashboard that we have. That's a part of the program here. That's something that's been in development for the better part of a year at this point. But in July, that's when I started getting involved, and my main responsibility was just creating the content for the sales training in this program. I don't know how many hours there are. There's probably anywhere from like 5 to 10, but it was something where I really wanted to go for quality over quantity of content. So it took a while to create the presentation, film it, edit it, make sure that there's supporting documents for each and things are as plug and play as possible. So got that done. And then the second thing was, okay, I need to know about really every part of this offer. And I also need my team to know that as well. That's why it's easier to do founder-led sales. You know every single part of the business, enough to be dangerous at least on those sales conversations, so you can speak to somebody and you don't have to fake that expert frame. You already are an expert at that thing that you're talking about. So at this point, I had a pretty lean team over at Client Ascension, 2 guys, Peter and Antoine, that have been with me forever. And we're only doing 3 team meetings per week, 30 minutes each. So pretty lackadaisical. I just shortened my agenda for each meeting to like 15 or 20 minutes, and then took the second 15 to 20 minutes, we were doing this for months, as you can see here, to watch one of the videos that's been filmed in the program. Because like I said, I jumped in a little bit later, other partners that were involved, they had a ton of content that's already been created. It was really, really helpful, just because upon launch, we're able to close quickly, and you're gonna see the numbers in a second here, because these guys knew how to set somebody for this offer and how to close somebody for this offer. And of course, it's not perfect, but this kind of aligns with this timeline being months and this being literally 9 days when I started building out the actual sales process here, with what I said earlier, just about spending much more time on product than marketing and sales. So September 1st to September 9th, which was already a crazy period because we had that event that you guys just saw a sneak peek of from September 4th and September 5th, I think it was. But September 1st, like, oh shit, okay, this thing is launching, whether I like it or not, on the 9th. I need to create the sales process here. So the first thing I did was create a rough draft of the sales script itself. Then I created and organized the sales assets, because that kind of goes hand in hand, right? We're screen sharing certain assets on the call. We're sending certain assets over before the call. We're following up with certain assets. So getting those assets created, but then also helping myself and the rest of the team understand what is the purpose of these assets. Because obviously sales assets are helpful for somebody to be able to see and understand your offer better. But if you're just presenting it, it's really just more information. And especially with something like AI, there's so much information out there. If you're not showing them and relating it to their situation and how this is going to help them see the result that they want, which is growing a good business, making more money, then it's not going to move the needle the same way that you want it to. For example, with that AI dashboard that I mentioned earlier, you could screen share that and they'll be like, oh, that's really, really cool. It's a bot similar to like Hermosi's AI bot, where you can kind of go in and ask it questions. We have one for Daniel on the marketing side. We have one for Andre on the fulfillment side. We have one for VSL script creation, cold email creation. There's a ton more there that's training all of our content. But what's more important is that you're able to explain to the prospect how this helps you go to market and see results quicker, which we already know because that's kind of a tool that we rolled out inside of Client Ascension a long while before we actually launched this thing. And the same goes for all the different sales assets. When you're showcasing on a call, it can't just be a presentation. That's one of the reasons why I don't love traditional slide decks, because it feels like you're locked into a presentation. It's important that you understand what transformation this person needs to go through in the pitch based on your discovery, and you have specific assets at your disposal to be able to showcase those, right? So sales script, sales assets, then just like writing all the sequences, email, SMS sequences, just organizing all the tech, the PandaDoc, the Chili Piper that we use for scheduling, whatever, right? And that was all kind of done in this 8-day period here. Now, launch, when you guys saw me at the beginning of this video, this is where I jump back in, and you guys saw me talk about this in the presentation with Andre and also the little podcast I did with Stig. I enjoy doing that. I think for the foreseeable future, for a long, long time, I will always jump back in whenever we have a new offer, because I think it has a ton of downstream benefits. You guys will be able to see that in a second here. And then once you get on calls, it's really just about consistently iterating discovery and pitch, sharing feedback, call recordings with a team, and you're pretty much in Slack 24/7. Like, I hate that Slack notification, but whenever it's a super busy period like this, I turn the notifications back on my phone. So every single minute until it's like maybe 10, 11 o'clock, and even sometimes past then, you're getting a question, you're sharing some feedback, you're doing whatever you can, just keep the communication loop as tight as possible. Because especially when you're running a remote company like we do, super, super important. It's super hectic time. It's just way too easy with this much stuff happening for things to fall through the crack. So taking calls, obviously keeping my current responsibilities at both companies and managing all team meetings. So I'm really just taking the calls in between then. But in just a couple days, we're like, okay, this thing has legs. Number one, just because of the lead flow that was there. Then number two, because we're also converting that lead flow to closed deals. So you see, it was literally 2 days between when we launched and I was like, okay, let's see what happens, to when I started taking interviews. And we needed calendar space. So at this point, I was like, shit, I can't take myself off calendar. I need to interview closers. Let me just open up a different Calendly event for 6 to 10 o'clock, and I'll just start talking to new people that would be involved. And I'm going to touch on this in the takeaways, but it was so easy to conduct this hiring process just because we had crazy good quality of candidates that booked in and crazy volume of good people that booked in, fortunately. So 3 days later, September 14th, first 2 closers are already hired. So this is like a Wednesday or whatever. First 2 closers were hired that Sunday. And that's while putting everybody through a 2-call process, where it's like the first call, I'm trying to figure out if we would want to work with you. You're trying to figure out if we'd want to work with us based on the job description. Very much ask them about like previous experience, cash collected, close rate at other offers, why they're looking for a new role, why they want to be a Client Ascension closer, where they see themselves long term, if that kind of fits within the vision here. Because like I said, with the sales team that we do have, it's been a lot easier to launch new things and to consistently test without me needing to do everything, because we've got really good retention over on the sales team. So anyways, these guys are hired. At this point, with the calls that I'm having, one of the things I love that was a huge unlock for me was the Claude and Fireflies connection. So Claude is an LLM similar to ChatGPT. Fireflies is what records our calls, and they actually natively integrate. So I was just able to ask a bunch of questions about like, hey, what have been the most common objections so far? And that was super helpful, Because one of the main things that you can fuck up when you're starting out and you're writing out a new sales script is you'll have like a bulky discovery, you'll have a really bulky pitch, and the calls will just run out of time up until the point where you can't really ask for the sale. You don't really get a clear no, you don't really get a clear reason. I've made that mistake too many times before, so I made this like a pretty lean, bare bones script. The calls were still super long, of course, just because it wasn't as lean and bare bones as I thought. But because we were asking for the sale on the vast majority of calls, I was able to get that feedback so that I could take that and improve the discovery and try to say, okay, how many of these common objections could we solve before we even get to the pitch? And based on these objections, like which parts of the pitch are we focusing too much on? What are we not doing enough of? So a lot of talking to AI and just obviously reviewing my own calls at this point. Now, a couple days later, this is when we put both closers on calendars. At this point, we've already collected over 6 figures. That's revenue collected, not revenue generated, which people always talk about. I don't want to talk too much about numbers at this point, guys. The numbers are really strong, fortunately. We want to continue to grow this, but I don't want to make this a channel where it's all like, we made this much money, and I'm not a big lifestyle marketer guy, as you can see. I'm here in a wife beater. We've seen since launch in the past couple of weeks here what the downfalls are of lifestyle marketing. I'd rather actually just talk about like what we're doing, like what this looks like. But yeah, at this point, over 6 figures cash collected. That's before we even rolled out financing options to pull cash forward quicker and had any closers on the calendar. But this is when they started. And then every single night, I just started reviewing a minimum of 1 sales call per day. Like these are hour-long conversations a lot of the time. And I'm giving like at least a page of notes on this thing. I'm usually leaving a page of notes and then leaving like probably anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes of voice notes after this. Because with new people, it's just super important to be super feedback heavy in the beginning. Like if a closer starts working for me, of the call reviews that I'm going to do for that person, I probably do just as much in the first 2 weeks as I'm going to do in the next 3 months for that specific person. Right. And once again, going to jump into the takeaways in a little bit here. On the 21st, 3rd new closers hired and an onboard. I took myself off of calendar at this point to focus more on quality control, still doing those deep sales call reviews. And one thing here that I talked about is just like building an AI call review bot. I love that. AI can be super helpful when it comes to reviewing sales calls. At the same time, when it's a new thing, I don't think anything beats just literally sitting there and just understanding, okay, what's this person's body language? Where do they seem to shut down? Is my closer comfortable enough in silence? Is my closer too comfortable in silence to the point where they're letting people ask off the call? What sales assets seem to be working with the screen share? It's like once you get the process where you need it to be, that's where like over at ListGate, I have a good AI call review bot. That's where you can start leveraging it when you have tons of historical data. In the beginning, guys, there are no shortcuts. Literally just sit there and watch the calls. I don't think I've ever sat down and watched an entire call and not gotten a lot out of it, to be honest with you. Now, once again, took myself off calendar. I hired the 3rd closer, 926, so like the end of that week. He was a bit of a longer onboarding. He's on calendar full time. I'm continuing to do call reviews and really took the team, and I kind of instruct people to do this, where if you have a team of 3 or less, you can get away with 3 meetings a week, half-hour meetings. Team of 3 or more, you should be meeting every day. Right. So we went to daily meetings at this point at the end of the month here. The 30th of September, I took that part-time setter that we had and I promoted it to full-time. So today, like you're able to look at that transformation. When we started this thing on 9/9, we had 1 closer, 1 setter, which was part-time. Now we have that setter being full-time and 4 full-time closers. And we went from 3 sales team meetings per week to 8 sales team meetings per week. So you can see how quickly things can change, right? It's not even a month different. Now, team stats to date since launch, there's been 230 calls booked, 155 live calls, 130 offers, and 65 closes, which is a 41.9% close rate. And we always do closes based off the live calls, not the offers. The only reason why I calculate the offers itself, it's really more of a marketing metric to give feedback to, hey, are these people even worth getting on the calendar? So we can fix like the lead scoring in our Typeform application and all of that good stuff. Personal stats with the calls that I took from 9/9 to 9/21, 43 calls booked, 29 live calls, 25 offers, 15 closes. So I was at like a 52% close rate, 51.7 to be exact. Guys, this is one of the reasons why I love jumping back into things. It's just so much easier to have new people that you hire who may not really know you and maybe they're just meeting you, have a certain high level of reverence for you because they jump in and they're like, oh shit, he's closing at the highest rate. I should probably listen to what he's saying. I'm not saying that's a necessity for leadership. Obviously, there's multi-billion-dollar companies with people that are higher up enough and they're just doing leadership and they're still obviously growing companies that are way larger than us. But this is something where if you're already doing founder-led sales and you're good at it, it can work really well for you because it is that shortcut to kind of just earning the team's respect, so to say. Now, to go into the takeaways, even if you're your own boss, you need deadlines and accountability. Like I talked about, at this point, I hadn't done anything with the sales process. We're like 9 days from launching and I'm like, oh shit, I have to get this done because we were launching it then. And I'm my own boss, but I still have these deadlines that we set. And even if I'm the one setting them, it's just healthy to be in that mindset where you're treating them as life or death and accountability. So you can get that through a coaching program. I personally got it here from my business partners who are all working on their own different things, their own different content for the program. I, of course, don't want to be the one who's like, dude, I don't have the content done. We have to delay by a couple of days, right? So even if you're your own boss, there's still immense value in deadlines and accountability. And just think about how brainwashed you are to just like pay attention to deadlines since grade school. Like that was just the habit of getting shit done for your entire life. It works. So just continue to use that. Second thing, once you have momentum, sprint downhill. Guys, we could have easily just been like, all right, we've took enough sales calls. Beta group is over. We signed enough clients. Let's kind of just slow down here. Or let's create a wait list because, we want to take our time with the hiring process and this and that. Dude, you always just need to be selling, right? You need to sprint downhill. Things are going to break. It's going to be fine. It's such a precious thing, momentum, that when you have it, you can't afford to take your foot off the gas. You really can't, because for every single company that is taking their foot off the gas, there's another company who's fucking just full throttle when they do have momentum. So once you have it, don't lose it. Make sure you sprint downhill. Third, the biggest hiring cheat code you can have, like I talked about, that we had the quality and the quantity this time around because we haven't hired in a while for a closer position, is your personal brand and a great reputation. So I'm not talking about my personal brand. Very fortunate to have partners where I can basically reap the benefits of their personal brand. So a lot of the guys who booked in, dude, I've been following Daniel for a while. He puts out really good shit. I just always respected the way that he does things, blah, blah, blah. Like that's the reason why they show up to the call. And then a great reputation. Hey, I've known about Client Essential for a long time. I know that in this industry, you guys always do a good job. I've sold for other coaching programs. It was always hard to sell against you guys, or every time I talk to somebody that had been in Client Ascension, they only had good things to say. It is the biggest hiring cheat code, and hiring is obviously a very important thing, even in this day and age of leveraging AI as much as you possibly can to make more money, which literally everybody should be doing. You're still going to need people for certain roles, like a closer. If you are competing against everybody else who has a better personal brand, who has a better reputation, you're shooting yourself in the foot. So make sure that obviously you're doing good work, you're putting that goodwill out in the market, then make sure you're working on your personal brand, guys. For hiring purposes, that may be something we've seen even more ROI on. Just the people we've been able to acquire are through our personal brands than even the sales calls that we do get booked from it. Now, 4 things that lead to a successful onboarding with closers. Number 1, you have to have a structured enough onboarding so that these guys can just work full days before they're even on calls. So what that looks like for us, I put together a ton of content. So I have my sales content that people in the program would go through anyways, that these guys are trained on, call reviews, tons of them that I've done, like just like a Google sheet full of just like a bunch of closes that we have, so they can see what success looks like and reverse engineer that. Information about the company, like I'm having them watch client success stories, SOPs for the different tech that we're using here. But because there's hours and hours of content for them to dive in, right away, day one, even before they're on calendar, they have a full work day cut out for them. And you just being able to check in and get on a call with them every day and seeing how much stuff they're going through, you're getting a good taste as to like, okay, is this person a hard worker that's going to work out or not? You don't want them dragging their feet, but also if you don't want them dragging your feet, you need to give them enough content so that they don't have to. Right. Another big part of that is just mock calls throughout the process, shadowing calls, all those things are huge. Second, clear expectations. For us specifically, I set out a KPI for what the close rate should be, which is usually 80% of my close rate. So if I'm closing at 50%, the KPI is 40%. I'm expecting people to perform at 80% of what I'm performing at. If they don't get to have KPI in the first 20 calls, they're fired. They're cut off the team. We're hiring commission-based closers. So I'm actually doing a good service to both me and them. Because what I've seen is if they don't get up to at least half KPI in the first 20 calls with minimal training, just what they're seeing on the onboarding itself, usually that hill that they would need to climb up to being a good closer is too steep of a hill to climb, right? It's very difficult to take a 3 out of 10 to an 8 out of 10. It's very manageable to take a 7 out of 10 to a 9 out of 10, right? So super important. I also communicate that with the guys in the onboarding. So like after they go through the interview process, I'm like, hey man, we want to move forward with you specifically. That's a conversation I have with them and make sure they're on board before we even get started. Because once again, in a commission-based role, I'm not going to be happy because they're not closing enough deals. They're also not going to be happy because they're not going to be making money. I just know that when they don't hit that KPI, they're not usually going to make as much money. It just drags out. It's bad for both parties, right? And all 3 new closers did hit that KPI. And then just number 3, an absurd amount of feedback in the first couple weeks. Like I said, turn those Slack notifications on your phone. Make sure you're setting up more team meetings. Like you can't allow things to slip through the cracks, because if you're not doubling, the amount of feedback that you have, where all of a sudden you launch a new offer and you have double the work, like you can't expect things not to break at a higher rate. And then last, lead by example. This is an optional one right here. With the sales call specifically, it's something that I like to do. But if you're already doing founder-led sales, I do think there's a ton of benefits, a ton of shortcuts that I already talked about here. Pitfall to avoid in the sales side, I talked about this earlier, but obsessing too much about discovery and pitching that you don't ask for the sale. Because what happens is if I ask for the sale and I'm hanging in there enough and obviously pushing past it, I'll think about it and just the basic objections there, and finding like the real true isolated objection, what that allows me to do is just structure the discovery in a way that actually leads to a close, and structure the pitch so that I'm trimming all the fat, but I'm still hitting the things that I need to hit that would move the needle for somebody. So even like those corny, like, hey, what would make this a yes type questions, those are super helpful in the beginning. Like you need like real honest feedback at the end of the call. If you obsess too much about the discovery and the pitch that you don't get to that point, you're shooting yourself in the foot. So make sure that with a new offer, every single call that you're going in, your mindset should be like, okay, obviously the person needs to be a good fit, but if they are, I'm pitching, I'm asking for the sale. What's the worst they can say? It's no. Don't wear like the blinders that will tell you like, oh, I launched a new offer and the first 10 people I talked to said like, thanks, send over the information. And that's a good thing. Like, no, like you need to know if they're not buying, specifically, why are they not buying? Because that's how you make a better discovery and pitch. Pitfall to avoid on the product side, not having enough feedback loops to improve quickly. So with coaching, it's a lot easier than something like SaaS to improve quickly, just because if people need specific advice, specific guidance, you can add an additional coaching call. You can have a new video made, a new SOP made. You can have a new module built out. So it's a lot easier with a coaching business. But obviously, if people are in here with the assumption that you guys are going to help me grow quickly or build quickly, you need to do this shit really quickly. So you need to have feedback loops. So obviously, with this program being a bigger focus on AI, we have a call that's just AI coaching every single day. Whereas most of the other calls like sales or cold email or organic content creation, those things just happen once a week. Then also inside of the learning platform that we use, which is Kajabi, we literally just put up like a form submission button that anybody can press, and they're seeing it as they're going through the videos that just asks them for feedback, or ask them to submit requests for additional videos, which obviously is a lot of extra work on our end, but that's what's required to be able to get the product to the point where it truly needs. And that's kind of the same transition that we went through with Client Ascension when we first launched. And because we have a bigger headcount than when we first launched, I'm happy to say it is improving a lot quicker than the first time we launched this program, which was end of 2021. Then lastly, this is more so just like a personal thing. It's going to feel like complete chaos at this point. But if you're not enjoying it, like at this point where you're closing deals, you're adding new team members, there's tons of stuff going on, you're getting feedback left and right, and there's like truly something you can log into your computer and work on that like is actually going to make a massive difference every single day. Like that's just a period where we're in right now. It's going to feel like chaos, but if you're not enjoying it, like if you don't enjoy it now, like now is the fun time, you're probably doing the wrong thing. So if you're starting something new and it's going crazy and it's working, you're starting to see signs of promise here, like we kind of showed up here, and you're still not enjoying it, you're probably just doing the wrong thing. There's gonna be so much work that's left for you on the other side of this. Like I know how many things we need to do and get done, and it's just like an insurmountable amount of stuff. You're probably not gonna be up for the task on the back end of that if you're not enjoying it. Literally the most fun part of the whole process, right? Everybody loves starting new stuff. That's why people get shiny object syndrome, even when it's not a good idea for them. Anyways, like I said, we've got a lot of stuff upcoming. We got to, really crack cold traffic. The vast majority of everything that you just saw here is all from warm organic traffic and, from inbound, from the different, marketing videos and emails that we've been putting out up to this point. So that's going to be a whole thing within itself. There's, tons of things that you can do. There's webinars, there's hiring new team members. There's a lot of it, but so far, less than a month in, I'm going to give you guys the board again. I'd say great success, and we're super pumped about the future of this program. Like I said, it's something where we put more work into this one than any other one that we've ever done at this point. And there's that insurmountable laundry list of things that we need to do, but we're up for the task. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Obviously, going to be talking more about this stuff in the future, but hopefully it was a good look into what goes into a launch like this. Peace, guys.